Again, we ask you to raise your hand. Please give your name and affiliation, and we'll start here with Tom Murphy. Tom.
Hi, Tom Murphy, Arkansas Democrat-Gazette for Hunter, please. I understand you have a pretty famous 100-day plan. I'd like to know if you presented something to the chancellor in your interview process. And secondly, what role did you play in the hiring of the new football coach, if you could tell us, please?
Sure. Tom, thank you for the question. And to address your first one, I do have a 100-day plan, and I did present that to the chancellor during the course of our time together. That 100-day plan, it really engages me in the university community, the Fayetteville and surrounding community, and across this state during my first 100 days. My involvement in the search process for the football coach has really been being a resource to Julie as she led this search. It's been 36 hours since I was officially hired as a director of athletics. It's hard for me to jump headfirst into a search, and as the chancellor mentioned, Julie has done an unbelievable job with this search process, and really what I became for her was a resource during the last 36 hours.
Okay, we'll go over here on our left to Bob Holt. Bob.
Thanks. Hey, Bob Holt, Arkansas Democrat-Gazette. For both of y'all, was the interview on Saturday? And I understand Stacey Lewis was there. Was it kind of weird because your basketball team's playing his basketball team and your basketball team beat his basketball team pretty soundly? And how did that impact things?
I'll take that first. When I called Hunter to let him know that he was my choice, the first thing he asked me is, the job still available since they beat us? So I told him yes. The answer was it turned out that I had been on my schedule to be in Houston for that game, and it's been on my schedule for the last couple of months. We did a service project as the Alumni Association group from Houston organized, and we had a big, very big gathering, and then the game. So I was able to do an interview that morning with Hunter when I was in Houston. It worked out perfectly. And yes, Stacey Lewis, who's also from Houston, was with me. So it worked out. The timing was great for that to come together.
And Tom, I just talked to Coach Anderson. I said I went from Saturday, that being a great win, to today, that being a bad loss.
All right, Anna Kay, if we can get one here to the second row. Kurt in the middle first. Kurt Voigt.
Hey, Hunter, Kurt Voigt, Associated Press. Two quick questions. The first is, I know you said you're going to kind of ease your way into things as far as making decisions, but during the process or immediately after being hired, were you given a mandate for how to approach or handle games, the future of games post-2018 in Little Rock? And then secondly, in a big picture, how do you feel like Arkansas football fits in the SEC?
I'm going to let the chancellor answer the question about Little Rock.
Yes, I'll just start there. We have not had a conversation. I've been engaged in conversation for probably 6 to 8 months about the issue, and have just recently met with some folks from Little Rock to talk about what we're doing. So we're still working through that. Hunter and I have not had the opportunity to sit down and go through the whole situation with the entire briefing. So we haven't done that yet.
In the second half of your question, I'm sorry. Fits very well. We're going to hire, and we're in the process of hiring the right football coach, and I think you're going to see great things for our football program. But, the SEC West is the toughest division in college football, bar none. And it's very important that we get the coaching search right and hire the right person to lead our football program into the future, and I think we are on the brink of doing that, and Arkansas fits very well in the Southeastern Conference.
Okay, we'll go back over here on the left. Grant, you have a question? All right, go ahead, Grant.
Grant Hall, 99.5 Hog Radio. Could Chancellor, you talk a little bit more about Stacey Lewis's input and where you first got the idea that this man is a great athletic director?
Yeah, so just to back up about the process and just say a few words about it, is this process began a few weeks back by myself talking to many people around the country, other ADs, other presidents, other sports consultants, et cetera, of who should be on the top list. And from that, I gathered a list of about 50 individuals to start to take a look and to vet. Hunter's name came up probably more frequently than any other name for that list at that time. I formed the search committee at that time, and it turned out that Stacy, we were looking for former athletes to be on that, as well as that committee was composed of some campus input from Dean McKeith. We had Gerald Jordan to represent the students' interest on it, some people from the business community, et cetera. So it was wide-based to take a look at and help vet the list that I'd come up with by looking at all these other sources. So Hunter's name was actually on this list before the committee was even formed. And then it turned out that with Stacy being, first of all, in Houston, and second of all, having a spouse who led the golf program under Hunter, there was this other input then that was very valuable into vetting the candidate for the committee. And so she was very, very valuable in the end to help us to decide if Hunter was the right person. So I'm really indebted to Stacy for that. She stepped up and did a fantastic job for us.
Okay, we'll go over here to our right. Nate.
Nate Allen, Sports Service. Chancellor, I was wondering if Jeff Long had any input or advice into this search, and also for Hunter, did you talk to Jeff about this job and get any input from him?
So the answer is no. I didn't consult with Jeff for names for this search.
And no, I did not reach out to Jeff. I've got a number of other colleagues across the country that have a better relationship with Jeff, and were able to fill me in here at what the happenings at the University of Arkansas, but Jeff and I have not spoken.
We'll go down here on our left. Trey.
Yes, Trey Biddy with hogsports.com. I was just curious what your level of familiarity with Arkansas is. Have you been to Fayetteville before? And also just a little background. Your bio says you're from Richmond. Is that where you were raised and your extended family, or are you from somewhere else? Or
No. No, this is my first trip to Fayetteville, Arkansas. I've been to Harding University. I believe that's correct. One time in a visit to Arkansas, but this is my second trip to Arkansas. I was born in Richmond, Virginia. My dad was transferred to Charlotte, North Carolina in the 8th grade. The majority of my family lives in the Charlotte area, and Jennifer's family lives in Brevard and Greensboro, North Carolina. So this business has taken me all over the country. We have gone from Wake Forest to Vanderbilt to Akron, Ohio to coastal Carolina, on the coast of Myrtle Beach to Houston, Texas. And, one of the things Jennifer and I have really prided ourselves on is really getting engrossed in whatever community we were a part of. If it was at the beach, we were out, we had jet skis living on the water, and now we're in Houston, Texas, and I own a good pair of boots and a hat, and I go to the rodeo. And so, we feel like we will do the same thing here in Arkansas, and Jennifer and I will become, like I said earlier, part of the fabric of this community.
All right, we'll go over here to the right. Bo.
In the middle here, Hunter, welcome to Arkansas.
Thank you.
Bo Mattingly from Sports Talk. What is your sense coming into the job, beyond just generally what an athletic director would do? What is your sense on what Arkansas needs right now?
Well, there's been a great foundation set here at Arkansas, great facilities from what the people I have talked to, great people within the athletic program, great coaches, great support from a budgetary standpoint from our donors and constituents. And really what we need is a football program that competes for championships in the Southeastern Conference. That's what drives the train. It really does. That's what drives your revenue. That's what creates that brand perception that you need. We have other very, very competitive, nationally competitive sports here at the University of Arkansas, but for our program, entire athletic program to be successful year in and year out, we need our football program to be successful year in and year out, not only in the Southeastern Conference, but nationally.
Okay, we'll go here in the second row. Tom.
Yep, Tom Murphy, Chancellor Steinmetz. You mentioned a pool of about 50 names that you started with. Could you tell us how many the firm vetted for you guys, and what maybe a list of finalists, and how many you talked to, you interviewed?
The initial 50 list did not come from the search firm. It came from hard work done by a lot of people that I know, and that worked on some from the advisory committee once we had it. So I'd say the process was, and I want to stay in very general terms. I will not talk about individual candidates that were in the pool, but it was a process of going from that 50 to perhaps 20 or so in the discussions with the committee where there was a fit, and some of them eliminated because it was very likely they weren't going to leave the places that they were at. From all kinds of conferences, all kinds of, from Power 5 sitting ADs to other individuals. And then from that, after committee discussion about the pluses and minuses of that larger list, cut the list down to what is about 7, I believe, we ended up with. And then from that, there emerged, this is when the search firm came in, because I needed the search firm to make the contacts with the list of finalists, and also asked them, by the way, at the time if they had other names. And it turns out the names that they had, we had already had in the process. But they were very helpful at that point, moving us forward with making the contacts and also doing the background checks and the vetting that's necessary that we're not, we can't do. And so from that, they made contact with, I believe, 7 or 8. I think it was 7 or 8. And 3 were not interested, meaning they were in positions that they didn't want to move from, and they didn't want to continue on. That left 5. I telephoned the 5 and had extensive conversations with those 5, and then reduced that to 4, and then went and personally visited those 4. And I consider that those four to be like the final list that we had. And in those interviews, I took members of the advisory committee with me to help with that process. And that's when, for example, Stacy Lewis was the one that was in on Hunter's interview. And then from that, I came up with the final choice.
Okay, we'll go back here to Mitch on the left side.
Hi, Hunter. Mitch Roberts with 4029 Sports. Given you mentioned driving the train, and football is what does that here and at Houston, knowing that, how comfortable are you coming in and not having that much of a hand in who the football coach is going to be, given how important it is?
I think you'll find out in the very near future. I am very comfortable, very comfortable. We're heading in the right direction as a football program.
Okay, we'll go stay on the same side. Bob?
Hunter, could you just talk maybe some specifics about your 100-day plan? What things do you think need to happen in your first three months and 10 days, I guess, on the job? And when you went to Harding, where were you working then? Do you remember what year it was, and what was the circumstance?
I was a member of I'll answer the last question first. When I went to Harding, I was just a member of an NCAA Sportsmanship and Ethical Conduct Committee, and I was presenting an award to a student athlete on their campus. And so I was part of an award ceremony they were having on their campus, serving on an NCAA committee. As far as a 100-day plan goes, it really engages me into the university community, the Fayetteville community, the region, and the state. Me getting around, asking questions of hundreds of people, listening intentionally and learning about the culture here at this university, within our athletic program, within this community, and within the state. And that's really, really important. I mentioned I'm not from the state of Arkansas. I have very few ties to the state of Arkansas. I have to spend that first 100 days really listening and learning before I develop any other plans for our athletic program.
Okay, we have time for 3 more. We'll start with Josh here on the... Wow.
Josh Bertuccini, 92 on the ticket. This one would be for both you gentlemen, maybe you first, Chancellor. The exciting stadium renovation right now, a lot of possibilities, including things that can be done on game day. Chancellor, how much did Yurachek's experience with stadium renovations and refurbishings factor into this? And then maybe any possibilities out of you, Mr. Yurachek?
Josh, great question, because one of the facilities is a big issue in being competitive in having the best facilities. And in Hunter's background, both at Coastal Carolina as well as Houston, there's great progress have been made in two areas. One, fundraising for to pay for the improvements in the facilities, and second of all, getting the facility improvements done. And I think the number might be something like $250 million at Houston or something like that. That's current, if I remember the number right. That's currently underway in renovation. So keeping updated is extremely important, particularly in the SEC, because it is a very, very competitive conference, not only in competition, but also in the facilities that are available. So having somebody that has managed this somewhere very, very successfully was a very big priority as well. So thanks.
Right in the middle. Oh, okay.
Sure.
Sure.
Obviously, I'm very excited to be a part of the finishing of the end zone project. I mean, that's a facility that's been designed, and the money has been set aside within the athletic department budget to pay for the debt service on that building. But I think my experience in being a part of $230 million is the exact number of facility, either new projects or enhancements at the University of Houston over the past 4 years of my time there. That included a $125 million football stadium, a $25 million basketball practice facility, a $20 million end zone football practice facility, and currently we're undergoing a $60 million renovation to the basketball facility there at the University of Houston. So, you know, I've walked through a lot of facilities under construction. I've been a part of getting those to the finish line, and so I look forward to touring that facility and looking at the plans and seeing if there's any way I can, you know, maybe put a touch or two on there from some of the experience I have with the facilities at Houston and at Coastal Carolina University.
Thank you. All right, we'll head over to the middle.
Ahmed Ahmed, Arkansas Democrat Gazette. For the Chancellor, what feedback during the search did you get from the Board of Trustees? How would you compare and contrast that with the role of the Search Advisory Committee? And then for both gentlemen, the tax bill proposal at the federal level, there's been discussion about how that might influence giving to athletics. Do you have any thoughts about that legislation and how that might affect Razorback athletics?
It's to answer the first part about the involvement of the Board of Trustees. So, well, first of all, Ben Heineman was one of the committee members, but he didn't serve as a role as a representative of the board, but more or less somebody that has a passion for Razorback athletics and a passion for the university. So he was invaluable. There were no updates to the board in any formal sense during the process until I was ready for the selection itself. And as you know, the board went into executive session on Thursday with a number of matters, and then called me for they wanted an update at that point of the two searches. But what I was able to do is, it was that morning I'd had the conversation with Hunter at 8 o'clock, said, you're the guy. And happily was able to present that to the board then during that call, with all the logic and the reasoning behind why Hunter was the right person, and at the same time was able to talk about the process and how we arrived at that conclusion. With the tax bill, I have been in communication with our state delegation, both the senators and state representatives, about the impact that has on the university in general. And it's not the only part of the tax bill, by the way. I've been in communication with them about particularly about the tax that's being included in there on fee waivers for graduate students, which I think will devastate graduate programs across the country. So I think left in, it of course has a negative effect on both of those issues. So from our preference, we'd certainly like to see those removed or out of the final bill that's passed.
All right, we'll take one final question over here. Paul.
Paul Gatling with the Northwest Arkansas Business Journal. Hunter, you graduated college in 1990, and then you've pretty much spent your entire adult life working in college athletics, college administration. So you remember a time when there was no TV revenue, no TV contracts, no football coaches making $75 million guaranteed for 10 years. And we've really we see it more every year, but really this year the number of buyouts and guaranteed money and the multi-million-dollar contracts are becoming more and more prevalent. So my question to you is just kind of what your opinion is on where you see the college athletics universe being 20 years from now. Is this a sustainable path that we're on?
Absolutely not. I don't think at any level. I mean, I have been at Coastal Carolina at the FCS level, and then recently at the University of Houston. We had a $30 and $45 million budget, respectively, at those two institutions, and they're competing at the same level now with all these teams in the SEC. I spent some time in the SEC back in 1998, 99, 2000 at Vanderbilt. It is a totally different SEC than it was back then, and we've got to get a handle on coaches' contracts and the buyouts. And I'm adamant. To me, losing football games is being terminated with cause. And the protection sometimes that coaches are provided within their contracts, to me, is ludicrous. And, I want to be a leader in this industry and how we write our coaches' contracts moving forward so that there's not 100% guaranteed protection for their contracts. Yes, coaches need some protection. They're moving their families to a community, especially the expectations are so incredibly high, especially in this conference in the Power Five, that coaches deserve some protection. But for someone the likes of Kevin Sumlin to get paid 100% of his contract, $10 million, I think that was a mistake. I'm not at Texas A&M, but and I know they're in our conference and we compete with them, and they'll probably hold that against me for telling them, but that's a mistake in our industry. And it's not a sustainable model moving forward. You just look at the growth in the past 20 years, think 20 years from now.
All right. Thank you, Chancellor Steinmetz, Vice Chancellor Yurachek, and I appreciate everyone being here today.